What you're about to hear is a story that, for decades, was surrounded by silence, distorted interpretations, and feelings that very few truly understood. The truth is that behind the spotlight, the magazine covers, and the thunderous applause, there was an Elvis Presley almost no one really knew. A young man carrying loneliness, insecurities, and pains the world had no idea existed. And beside him, a teenage girl who could never have imagined she was about to step into the heart of the biggest musical idol on the planet. Today, Priscilla Presley finally opens the vault of her emotions and reveals what it was like to grow up inside Elvis's storm. What she heard, what she saw, what she felt, and what almost no one knows about those years. And get ready, this story will break myths, challenge long-held beliefs, and place you inside a version of Graceland even the oldest fans never experienced. Here, you'll understand something that changed the destiny of both of them forever, the deep, unexpected, and above all, human connection between Elvis and Priscilla. A relationship that still sparks debate, reflection, and admiration to this day. And before we go on, let me ask you something. As a fan, how do you feel revisiting such a controversial period in the King's life? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear your voice in this conversation. Because now, you're about to join me on a journey that begins in 1959, but still echoes today in the hearts of millions of fans around the world.
And before we continue, I want to ask you, as a fan, what do you think about this phase of their lives? How do you see this relationship through the lens of today? Share your opinion in the comments. It's incredibly important to enrich this conversation. The story between Elvis Presley and Priscilla Presley begins in one of the most peculiar periods of the King of Rock's life. It was 1959. The world was still dealing with post-war tensions, American youth was changing rapidly, and music was about to enter one of its boldest eras. But at that moment, Elvis Presley was far from the stages, far from the crowds, and far from the frantic rhythm that made him a superstar. He was serving in the U.S. Army in Wiesbaden, West Germany, a rigid, cold environment completely different from the life of a global icon he had left behind. For many fans, this is one of the least understood chapters in his history. Elvis had lost his mother shortly before leaving for the Army, and anyone familiar with his biography knows how deeply that affected him. He was only 24, but carried a mix of premature maturity and an intense loneliness that few people could grasp. Despite worldwide fame, Elvis was, in many ways, emotionally vulnerable, a young man trying to keep his feet on the ground while the whole world saw him as a giant. It was in this context that Priscilla Presley entered the picture. The daughter of a U.S. Air Force officer, she was only 14 when she arrived in Germany, coming from a disciplined and ordinary family routine. She was shy, quiet, polite, and despite her young age, carried a maturity far beyond that of most girls her age. Her own recollections show that she felt this way too, young only in numbers, but emotionally much older than people expected. The first meeting between the two happened at the home of a mutual acquaintance. That moment has become part of fan folklore. Elvis was sitting, talking with a few friends and servicemen, listening to music and trying to live as normally as possible. Priscilla arrived quietly, and perhaps she herself could not imagine that this would be the beginning of a story that would stretch across decades. When Elvis first saw her, he noticed something different. It wasn't immediate attraction or romance, but a deep curiosity. He sensed she wasn't impressed by the fame, the status, or the aura of being one of the most famous men on earth. She was simply a quiet girl, observant, speaking little, listening much. And that was exactly what touched him. Elvis was surrounded by people who always wanted something from him: attention, money, opportunity, status. But with Priscilla, it was different. He found someone who treated him like a human being, someone willing to hear his pain, his longing for his mother, his fears about the future of his career, and his insecurities about the fast-changing music industry. Priscilla became an unexpected emotional refuge, someone he could trust during an extremely fragile chapter of his life. She has often said that Elvis seemed relieved when he talked to her. They spent hours discussing films, music, childhood memories, and deeply personal matters. Elvis shared his frustrations and his desperate need to be understood, and Priscilla offered exactly that: attentive listening, respect, and a quiet maturity that made him feel safe. He didn't find that connection with fellow soldiers, with friends from Memphis, or even with other artists.
For many fans, this is the most surprising part of the story. The bond between them wasn't built on glamour, seduction, or interest. It was built on loneliness. Two completely different worlds collided in a simple living room in Germany. On one side, the biggest music star in the world, emotionally shaken, trying to rebuild himself. On the other, a teenage girl who barely understood the scale of his fame, offering honest attention. Elvis had never experienced such emotional simplicity before, and it marked him deeply. Another detail that fascinates historians is that this army period was possibly the last chance Elvis ever had to live a truly ordinary life. No screaming fans, no recording deadlines, no show schedules, no Hollywood demands. And in the middle of this rare calm, he met someone who reminded him of who he was before becoming Elvis Presley, the phenomenon. It was in this atmosphere of vulnerability, respect, and emotional intensity that their relationship began to take root. Not as an explosive romance, but as a rare emotional bond built through long conversations, shared secrets, and a sense of mutual understanding. Priscilla restored a sense of normalcy to Elvis that he hadn't felt in years. And for Priscilla, Elvis awakened curiosity, admiration, and a kind of affection she didn't yet know how to define. From that first meeting on, their lives would change forever. Elvis found someone capable of breaking through his emotional armor, and Priscilla entered a universe no ordinary teenager could imagine: the intimate world of the man behind the icon. And it is this blend of fragility, destiny, and unpredictability that makes the beginning of their story so captivating to this day. And here's another question for you watching. Do you believe a connection this deep could happen the same way today? Do you think historical context changes how we should interpret this relationship? If you lived through that era or heard stories growing up, does it shape how you see this today? Leave your comment. Fans' opinions are essential to this conversation. When Elvis Presley returned from Germany to the United States in 1960, their lives entered a new chapter marked by distance, anticipation, and uncertainty. Elvis came back more mature and more aware of the pressure of fame. Meanwhile, Priscilla stayed in Germany, trying to adjust to her routine while carrying the emotional weight of that intense connection that had grown almost in secret. Despite the distance, they kept in touch through letters and supervised phone calls, her parents fully aware of the responsibility of allowing such communication. Their reunion would only happen years later, when Priscilla, still a teenager, moved to Memphis with her family's permission at age 17. The decision wasn't easy for her parents, but Elvis insisted she would continue her education, maintain discipline, structure, and, above all, be well taken care of. And so, Graceland suddenly became the center of Priscilla's world. For a young girl accustomed to the quiet, predictable life of a military daughter, living in the home of one of the most famous men on earth felt surreal. Inside Graceland, Priscilla quickly felt the contrast between her peaceful life in Germany and the emotional whirlwind of Elvis's world. The mansion was constantly filled with friends, musicians, relatives, and Elvis's inner circle, known for accompanying him everywhere. Their routine was marked by late-night hours, unpredictable schedules, long conversations, and a constant flow of people. It was a lively house full of energy, yet deeply lonely when Elvis was away filming or touring. Priscilla recalls living between two opposite feelings: enchantment and loneliness. When Elvis was home, he was affectionate, attentive, playful, and emotionally present. He loved talking to her about movies, music, and career plans, revealing an extremely sensitive side he rarely showed in public. He also loved cracking jokes, singing to her, and sharing childhood stories.
With Priscilla, he found an emotional refuge, someone who saw the man behind the superstar. But when Elvis was away, everything shifted. The house became too big, too quiet. Priscilla was a young girl far from her family, without friends her age, without freedom to come and go, and without Elvis's constant presence. She describes that time as one of waiting, adjusting, and discovering herself. She lived entirely within his world, following his rhythm, adapting to his universe. It required emotional discipline, patience, and a maturity most people overlook when discussing their relationship. Another important point is that Elvis had a controlling side, something not unusual for artists under extreme pressure. He cared about appearance, his and hers, and paid attention to her clothes, behavior, and style. Over time, Priscilla adopted a look closer to what Elvis liked. She learned makeup, fashion, and etiquette under his guidance. She doesn't describe it as absolute imposition, but as a natural dynamic within their relationship, where she wanted to please him while also searching for her own identity. Inside Graceland, Priscilla also saw Elvis's vulnerable side. She witnessed firsthand his insecurities about the future, especially as new musical styles emerged. Elvis feared being forgotten, replaced, or overshadowed by new idols. That fear was real and constant. He turned to Priscilla for reassurance, someone who could calm his doubts and remind him of his value when he questioned himself. At the same time, Priscilla had to cope with long periods of absence. Tours, Hollywood film schedules, and professional obligations kept Elvis away for months. While he faced the public side of fame, Priscilla lived the private side of silence. She was a very young woman trying to understand her place in a world that wasn't designed for her. She had to learn to deal with fans, rumors, expectations, and relentless media attention. But despite everything, she also experienced moments of great tenderness. Elvis could be affectionate, protective, and, in many ways, emotionally fragile. He needed comfort, understanding, and companionship. Priscilla became a confidant, someone who knew his deepest fears and who understood how much he longed for peace, rest, and someone who saw him as a person, not an icon. This dynamic, deep, complex, and emotionally charged, shaped both of them. They lived in a reality where love, youth, fame, and pressure collided daily. Priscilla matured emotionally, while Elvis struggled under the weight of his own legacy. Their relationship was built on affection, emotional dependence, admiration, and a constant search for balance. What happened inside Graceland was far more than romance. It was learning, transformation, and daily coexistence within a world very few could imagine. For Priscilla, it was a period of awakening. For Elvis, it was a period of emotional support he couldn't find anywhere else. And this combination of fragility and depth is what makes this chapter of their lives so captivating today. Their relationship, built over years of intense coexistence, reached a new milestone in 1967 when they married in Las Vegas. Although the ceremony was quick and carefully planned, it symbolized something far greater. The moment Priscilla transitioned from a quiet presence in Elvis's world to his official wife. For many fans, the marriage looked like the perfect ending to an unlikely romance. For them, it was the beginning of a new chapter filled with challenges. Married life began intensely. Elvis's schedule remained chaotic, with recordings, movie shoots, meetings, and obligations. Priscilla, now with more responsibilities and even less privacy, tried to adapt. In 1968, the birth of Lisa Marie brought new meaning to their relationship. Fatherhood revealed a sensitive side of Elvis, but his demanding career kept him away more than he wished, leaving Priscilla with the daily responsibilities at home. And taking advantage of this emotional moment, here's a question. What Elvis song most reminds you of his relationship with Priscilla? Share it in the comments. Let's build a playlist together. As the years passed, it became clear that Elvis's life was extremely difficult to keep up with. Constant pressure, expectations, and the need to maintain near superhuman performance took a toll on the marriage. Elvis lived between the stage and isolation, alternating between moments of brilliance and periods of emotional exhaustion. Priscilla often felt she lived in cycles, fully immersed in his life at times and distant at others, waiting for him to return and make room for them again. Meanwhile, Priscilla began to feel something she had never truly allowed herself to explore: her own identity. For years, she had shaped herself around Elvis's desires, routines, and expectations. She has often said that much of her youth was spent trying to fit into his world. But as time passed, this dynamic began exacting an emotional cost. She sought hobbies, friendships, personal interests, and, most importantly, independence. This wasn't easy for anyone involved. Their divorce, finalized in 1973, did not involve public fights or scandals as many might assume. Instead, it was an emotionally complex but respectful process. They shared deep ties, a daughter, memories, affection, and a history difficult for outsiders to fully understand. Until the end of Elvis's life, they maintained a kind and supportive relationship. The connection between them never entirely vanished, it simply evolved.
After the separation, Priscilla's life took new directions, both professionally and personally. One of her most significant roles emerged after Elvis's passing, when she assumed responsibility for preserving his legacy. She worked tirelessly to transform Graceland into a historic, carefully restored public landmark. Her efforts ensured that Elvis's image would remain alive for future generations, keeping his history respected and accessible. Priscilla became a guardian of Elvis's memory, overseeing projects, events, productions, and exhibitions that portrayed his life authentically. She faced delicate challenges, such as balancing what should be public and what should remain private. Her involvement in documentaries, interviews, and films has always been guided by the desire to portray the complete man, the artist, the friend, the father, the emotionally complex partner. As she grew older, Priscilla reflected more deeply on her story. In recent interviews, she speaks openly about the love, the challenges, and the emotional weight of her youth. She acknowledges that she was very young when everything began, and that this is something most people today struggle to understand. She also emphasizes that there was respect in the relationship, something she considers important to reaffirm so that her story isn't distorted by modern interpretations. Today, her reflections carry maturity and calm. She recognizes Elvis's greatness and fragility, understands the context of the era, and accepts that she lived something extraordinary, with beautiful parts and painful parts. She speaks fondly of the young man she met in Germany and the man she lived with until their separation. To her, Elvis was the great love of her youth, someone who left a permanent mark on her life, her heart, and her memories.
For fans, these reflections are invaluable because they humanize the myth even further. Elvis wasn't just the powerful voice, the iconic smile, or the unforgettable dance moves. He was a man with doubts, fears, dreams, and vulnerabilities. Priscilla witnessed some of his most delicate moments, and her memories help paint a more complete and human portrait of the King of Rock. Their story, with all its layers, remains alive because it transcends time. And thanks to Priscilla's dedication, it continues to be preserved and understood by generations who still fall in love with Elvis's legacy. And so, after all these years, the story of Elvis and Priscilla continues to echo in the hearts of fans, not as a simple tale, but as a human portrait, full of layers, emotions, and memories that survive through time. If you made it this far, it's because the King's legacy still lives inside you, and that's exactly why this channel exists, to honor these memories and keep alive the spark Elvis lit in the world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the King's life, I invite you to subscribe to the channel right now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. We have so much more history, curiosity, and truth to explore together. Leave your like. It helps our content reach more fans like you. And tell me in the comments, what part of this story touched you the most? I really want to know your thoughts. And of course, share this video with friends, family, and everyone who holds Elvis in their hearts. Let's spread this memory even further. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this community. And until the next video, Elvis forever present.